I think one of the hardships facing Xbox in the future is, will developers continue to support it? Are there going to be Xbox versions, quote unquote, in the future, or is it all just going to be like a Windows thing? To be quite honest with you, Microsoft might have saw the handwriting on the wall and just said, okay, well, that's why we've got to make this thing that's considered a PC, and drop some emulators on it or whatever, basically because developers aren't going to spend much time on a platform that's not going to be highly adopted, and it's going to be a rather niche platform. And let's just be real, whatever Microsoft is cooking up is going to be an incredibly niche platform. I would say even the current Xbox Series X and S are more of a niche product than some of the things we've seen before. I mean, the fact that the Xbox One was able to double the sales of what the Series X and S did just goes to show you how niche things really are with this. But it looks like what was a former Xbox 360 exclusive is getting a remake, and it looks like that remake might actually skip Xbox altogether, which again, like I said, this is a problem. I'm sure like most people are going to see this and then they're going to think, well, who cares about that game anyway? And I get that. A major remake of the visual novel Steins Gate has confirmed a Western release and an English localization for next year. While we never really got those on the original 360 exclusive, Steins Gate was, in terms of localized for the West, there is some hope that a remake could finally let us get them. The only problem is that there's no Steins Gate reboot for Xbox to be confirmed. Before it became a popular franchise with its own anime series and numerous sequels, Steins Gate was first an Xbox 360 exclusive game that released in 2009, back in Microsoft's Pro Japan period, which is, again, you look back at what the Xbox 360 was doing and why one of the reasons it was so popular, and it's because, they were putting out games that kind of appealed to everybody. I mean, yeah, it was the shooter box for sure. You had your Call of Duty, Halo, Gears, Battlefield, all that kind of good stuff, but they were releasing a lot of Japanese content, JRPGs, pretty much a lot of everything, and that was what was so fantastic about the Xbox 360. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. The game's branching storyline made a huge impression on those who actually got to experience it, telling the tale of some science and tech geeks after they discover a way to alter the past by sending messages back through time. As you might expect, things get even more twisted after that. So there's no English language Steins Gate game has ever been released for Xbox, but the developer kept releasing new titles for Xbox in Japan right up till 2017, and now Mages has partnered with Spike Chunsoft for a remake of Steins Gate. So far, it's only been confirmed for PC, but it boasts new animations, reworked backgrounds, and an expanded story. Basically, it looks great, even if you preferred the hand-drawn style of the original. Is there any chance that it could come to Xbox? That's the question being asked. Well, the odds don't look good. Frankly, the main kind of idea behind writing the article is to sway people into badgering them into making one. Otherwise, there's pretty poor track record working against Xbox fans. Has established no English version of any previous game has ever made it to any Xbox console, even though Mages did release new entries for the Xbox 360 and Xbox One in Japan. It did publish an English version on Xbox Series X and S and Xbox One in 2024. It also released Psycho Pass Mandatory Happiness in the West back in 2015, so it's not impossible to get English localized work, but it tends to favor the regular Switch, PlayStation, and PC releases instead. So again, like, that is, in my opinion, a real issue kind of going forward. You see, like, we're starting to see some games maybe that had released on Xbox before, or some of these titles that people might be interested in, and then you just see that they don't come to Xbox, which is really unfortunate, because I feel like Microsoft have kind of shot themselves in the foot. They always talk about how they want more of this type of content or that type of content, and then they never actually release any of the they kind of kill their own brand before anybody has a chance to really do anything. So it is a little bit under appreciated that Microsoft used to be able to get some of these platforms and things like that to kind of do things. And again, for me anyway, I'm just kind of looking at this and going, wow, Microsoft used to get a lot of different type of content, and now it's like they don't get anything. It's like to me anyway, just feels like Microsoft is like an afterthought for many developers. And so, yeah, that's kind of a big problem, in my opinion, going forward. And, you know, is that going to be something that's going to be able to change in history or throughout history or whatever? Listen, I have no idea, to be honest with you. I think Microsoft kind of put themselves in this weird situation where, you know, people are not very happy with the platform. And, you know, that's a real issue, because if people aren't happy with the platform, why would developers bother working on it? You know, or if people aren't invested in the platform. And I know some people might go, oh, well, you know, but what about, you know, the next Xbox Magnus or whatever? Wouldn't that be able to attract people? Like, PC games are horribly unoptimized for the most part. Like, we don't ever see PC games really optimized, and, you know, that's a real problem going forward. You know, like, Microsoft's going to have that issue where people think, you know, hey, well, the PC version or whatever, I'll just get that version or whatever the case may be. I don't think it'll work out that well, because, you know, a lot of these times we've seen it, especially with like a lot of Sony games that have released on PC. They're just not well made platform versions, you know, whatever the case may be. And you can kind of understand that a bit, especially when it comes from PlayStation, because PlayStation developers work first and foremost on a PlayStation version, and if they can't make it work on PC or whatever, then they don't, you know. So that's kind of a big issue right there, is that, you know, Microsoft is making, that's why I've always thought Microsoft's games, they don't really kind of hold water into, you know, they don't look as good as the PlayStation games, despite having a more powerful platform. Partly because, you know, they also have a weaker platform, but also partly because they have to, you know, get these games out that will run on an absolute potato. And people kind of forget about that. You know, it's like a weird thing, but it's like a true thing as well. It's like, if you have to have stuff that has to work on like these really crappy platforms, what are you gonna do? You know, like, there's not really much Microsoft can do. They got to get, and I'm not even just talking about the Series S. I mean, when you think about it, you know, Xbox Series X is more powerful than 70% of people who are gaming on Steam, right? So you got a 70% you know, and then so you got to that in that 70% that you're more powerful than, there's going to be some that are going to just be hardly any power whatsoever, but you still got to accommodate that. And, you know, that's a big issue in my opinion. So, you know, I kind of look at it that way anyway from my point of view. But yeah, it is weird, and like, this isn't necessarily a game that I'm interested in, so like, don't get it twisted or whatever. I just think that it's a bad precedent. So even games that I'm not interested in, or games that I don't really want, I think that it's something that, you know, we have to kind of still say it would be better for Microsoft to get this, because that makes the most sense. You can't just start a precedent where you're not getting, you know, games, and it doesn't matter what kind of games they are. You know, you can't really have that type of situation where that's happening, you know, and that is a big problem. So Microsoft needs to really kind of work through that, in my opinion, and, you know, that's something that hopefully they can do before too long. You know, I would love to see them do that. But is that going to be something that they actually can do? That's going to be another question entirely. You know, like I said, Microsoft has a way of kind of screwing people over, and that's just the way that it is. You know, they don't ever seem to really go all out for the fans or anything like that anymore. You know, and that's like super unfortunate. You know, that's honestly probably one of the more unfortunate things that I've kind of noticed. But you guys might think differently. I just don't think it's a good precedent for them to start, you know, missing out on games regardless of what they come to next or where they've been. It's just never really a good thing, in my opinion. So how do you guys feel about this? Do you guys think that it is a mistake? Do you guys feel like, you know, Microsoft is having, you know, more issues? And, you know, again, we'll see. You know, Microsoft really kind of put themselves in a pretty horrible situation. I can't imagine, you know, some developers, and again, I don't think it's going to be, you don't have to worry about big stuff like Grand Theft Auto or whatever, but again, I think it's the mid-level to small games that, you know, you're really going to see kind of, miss out on, you know, because they're not going to bother with the Xbox version. So, you know, we'll see what happens. Anyway, I'll link this. You guys can check it out. Let me know what you think in the comments. Rack 'em up, fact 'em up, crap gamer 'em up, crap gamer out.